Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here and checking out the series. Of course, please do hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the interviews that I put out every single week. It's a new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. 3 interviews a week to keep you up to date on your favorite artists and discover some new ones. iTunes, Apple Podcast, at Spotify, at NPR, WFPK.org, or of course, right here on YouTube for the video versions, but really anywhere you get your favorite podcast from, subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. That's me, Kyle Meredith. Today, we're talking about the movie Extraction 2 with actress Golshifteh Farahani and director Sam Hargrave. Now, Extraction, if you remember, came out just a couple years ago on Netflix and stars Chris Hemsworth as Tyler Rake, who has to extract a kid who's in a very dangerous situation. Well, once again, we have kids and a mother in a new, very dangerous situation. Now, if you've not seen Extraction, or if you have, you'll know that it's one of the coolest, most nuts action movies I've at least ever seen. On screen, it's got these one camera shots that just go on and on. It was instantly legendary for those moments right there. And it's one of Sam's first directing moments. He came from the stunt world. He's also been an actor, but really known for stunt coordination and, man, taking over this and now coming back for the sequel. So we got to talk about that. What does it mean to have this as a sequel, to have had a movie that special? How do you build upon that? So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about those famous camera shots and the scenes. With Golshifteh, we're going to be talking about her character is used a lot more. She's a lot more of the action on this one, and I want to hear about how this movie speaks on a global scale, because it's not just an action movie. I mean, it's a great action movie, but both of these, they seem to speak far beyond what an action movie would. So we're going to get into that. Both of them are musicians, so of course we're going to speak about the musicality of the entire thing and so much more. So let's do this. We're talking Extraction 2 with director Sam Hargrave and actress Golshifteh Farahani.
Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing well. An honor and a pleasure to meet you on here. And I'm sure you're getting this line a lot. Congratulations on Extraction 2. Lives up to the first one, which was no small feats. This is an incredible movie.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. I know with these posters behind me, this is going to be an obvious way for me to start this, but I know as you're a music guy as well, I was thinking about these two movies side by side, and I feel like this is one of the great sophomore albums, which you don't always get. And like a great sophomore album, it has to have its own style, but still probably has close connections to that debut.
Yeah.
How did you want to walk that line on this one?
That is a great analogy and an amazing question. Well, the first movie, we had no idea, especially, I had no idea how successful it would be, how much people would enjoy it. And so when you get the opportunity to direct a sequel, you kind of want to honor what it was about the first one that people really enjoyed and still differentiate the film so it stands alone and it's not a carbon copy of the original. So what we tried to do is, I think, definitely step up the action and try to push that a couple notches, but then make sure that we were going deeper into the emotional connection and lives of the characters, so that there was, because the first movie, there was a strong emotional core, but it was just enough, to kind of get you through. So it was like to take that and all the things that we as artists and creators talked about, the backstory of what made Tyler Rake, and put that on screen, because we knew a lot of that stuff, but we got the small, like the tip of the iceberg in that first film. So like, how can we put more of that foundation up on screen? And so that was a huge, important part of the conceit of this film. But then visually, how do we differentiate it? Because the first movie took place in a part of the world that was very hot, and so we've had like an orange, like a warm feel to it. So how do we take this and take it to a different part of the world and now have a different visual look while keeping the same visual style as the first movie? So, hopefully a lot of those things we succeeded in, but that was the goal, was to try to differentiate it from the look and tone, but then also the emotional depth, and then to take the action up a notch.
Yeah, that was actually really noticeable, by the way, because because coming off the first one, I mean, it's an insane balls to the wall action nonstop, almost. I remember during that first one going, my God, how long have we been going? Without a break. And when the story, after the first bit, because I think that sort of sets it up, but when the story starts hitting in the middle, and I'll continue to the analogy, it's like a set list, knowing when to drop the ballad in. That seemed to be a part of it anyway. Like the pacing, there is a musical rhythm to this movie. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Well, I appreciate that because I love music, and I think action definitely has a musicality to it and there's an interesting parallel to the universal nature of each one of those languages, music and action, because you can play a great piece of music anywhere in the world and people can be moved by it. And then I think with action, similarly, people might not understand, the words that are spoken on the scenes in between, but when that action hits, like when that rhythm drops, you can feel it, and people might start tapping their toes, and getting into it. So I think there's a definite parallel that I appreciate that you're onto.
So Golshifteh, when did you know that there was going to be a second?
Well, when they did the first one, they didn't want to do any sequel. It was just a one-stand movie. And then I think because of the success of the first one, they said they're going to do the second one. And I came to know it like quite late. And they just said, yeah, you need to come in early, 2 months early for the training. So I knew that they're bringing the characters onto the field of fighting. So that was it. I got to know that, whoa, we're doing 2 and maybe 3 and God knows prequels and sequels. And so it was exciting.
You are now part of a universe building is what this all comes down to. It's much more than an action movie. And I don't know exactly what it is to you, but it feels like it gets to be something more than just an action movie, that it's speaking on this global scale. What does that part, what does that part mean to you? What does it say?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about this action movie is that it also engage the audience emotionally. Is that now these days action movies that are incredible, also with VFX and everything, you watch the movie, nothing moves in you. There is no sensation. There is no empathy. There is no question about the characters. You just watch something as if you're watching something on TikTok, and then you consumed it, and that's it. You don't think about them anymore. But this one, I think that it has something that it is an incredible action movie. There is not much VFX in it because they did so many of those action scenes, like they landed the helicopter on that moving train. But also you get to engage emotionally, which I think this is a part I am really proud of, because I'm coming from the independent cinema where people only engage emotionally if you manage. And of course, it can get boring because there is no action sometimes. But this one, there is an action movie that there is this touch of basically connection between the story and the characters and the audience, which I'm very proud of. And I think that's probably it. And I would say also Netflix is that today, I don't know if we can call anything Hollywood anymore, because what is Hollywood today? Now Netflix, what we have done here, everyone is foreigners. Nobody's from America. Everyone is coming from all over the world. So I think somehow the world is coming together in these projects. And that's why also we're going all over the world, from Philippines to Prague to Madrid, Berlin, now here, Brazil, to take this movie, because it's something that suddenly so many millions in this world can watch it. And it's not from a specific place. We are all foreigners, and also we are not foreigners. We are the citizens of this earth, and we are working together, entertaining and also engaging emotions. So it's really moving. It's beautiful to be a part of this kind of project, I would say.
Yeah. And that is the thing too, because you guys have been on this world tour with the publicity.
Yep.
And there is something about this movie, like, sure, movies open outside of America, obviously, and they have big box office returns all around the world. But there seems to be something with this that maybe intentionally, maybe specifically is speaking to something bigger. And I don't want to put words in your mouth because I'm not even sure what that is myself. But what are you seeing? Like the way it's connecting everywhere else, and being able to tour the world like this on the publicity part.
It's an honor to be able to be that well received, even in the early stages. Like it's just trailers out there, just buzz, and people are really responding positively. And I think truthfully, I think a lot of that has to do with the universal language of action and the fact that people are appreciating it's kind of a throwback, I think, to the movies of the 80s and the Hong Kong style, where we do see a little more of the action. It's not in so close and choppy that it's really hard to differentiate the moves and understand. It's like there are, the musicality of it is you do have moments where it slows down or goes back, and you can really hear the instrumentation of the artist and appreciate that expertise. And I think people respond to that. And I think this movie as well, the emotional component and the relatability of this character, I think is very, now, not relating to, being a complete badass and stepping up and taking on armies of villains, but the emotional relatability of having, maybe done something, or, that having something in your past that you might not be the most proud of, but you're learning and growing and trying to be better and make up for that. I think people can relate to that on many levels.
I think there's something, I was talking to Chris about it. It's funny that there are kids involved. As if like these villains are so bad and ruthless, even though he kills maybe thousands of minions in the Extraction 1, he's still saving one kid. And that is our hero. He's killing so many people, but he's saving that one child. And I think it's something that is tied to Tyler Rake. And I would say to these villains, because we are a bunch of villains, we are gun dealers, we are killers, we are ruthless killers. We are not morally justified at all, but we go on missions to save families and save kids. So there are in these gray areas where you can justify their ruthlessness somehow, because they're actually doing something amazing, saving kids. And also in this one, of course, these kids are it goes more personal because they're somehow his family. Mm-hmm. But I would say, yeah, I don't know if in the third one they're going to also bring a kid to save. I don't know. But yeah, when you bring kids in, somehow you buy credibility, and you can like wash your sins, wash all the people that you're killing because you're saving the kids.
Yeah. As a father, and my son's now a teenager, but even all the way back to movies, like I was thinking like Legends of the Fall, when you have these father-kid moments and the way that you find him, like, of course, we know his past, Rake's past, and dealing with his child's, the death of his child and everything. But how you start weaving those into, now we have children in both movies, and I think I was wondering about that too, like what this movie gets to speak for. Yes, it's an action movie. And yes, it's talking about this global scale thing. But what does it speak to childhood trauma? Is that intentional, or is that just sort of come in with it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, from my point of view, and on the writing side, I know there's a certain level of that I know Joe, I would imagine, speaks to. But I think for me as a director, we've all, whether it's capital T or lowercase t, all have our own versions of trauma, in our childhoods. And that is kind of what shapes who we are and how we deal with that, and how, kind of points us in a direction in life. And then later on, if you haven't faced it before, at some point you're going to come across, those capital T or little t's. You're going to come across them and have to confront them. And I think Tyler Rake is that he's coming across trauma that is both. Now we haven't. This is an interesting one for maybe another movie, but necessarily gone into his childhood. But you can see from, where he is, where he came from, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times you say, show me your behaviors in the present, and I can show you your traumas of the past. And so I think we see a lot of who Tyler Rake is through what he's dealing with and how he dealt with, those situations that we saw from the first movie. Yeah.
It's interesting that you put it that way too, because when you've got a character like you're playing, Gol, like, you're not cold by any means, but there seems like there would have to be a detachment because of what you've dealt with, the things that you have seen. Like, how do you want to play her? How did you want to play her?
I think the thing is, she is a very strong, she has an empire. She's very strong. Maybe sometimes I ask myself, she has so much money that she doesn't need money to go on these kind of missions. Maybe it's just her liking to do these kind of things because she doesn't need it at all. And now maybe she gets involved for Tyler. She does it for him, really. At the same time, you see that she's not a love interest and she's not sexualized. She's this powerful warrior that for once in the history of cinema, maybe we don't care if it's a woman or a man. She's not sexualized. She's not in love with him, but at the same time, she's ready to die for him. So I forgot your question. I don't know where I was going.
You're really just talking about how you like to play. I was talking about that detachment and everything. Yeah, yeah.
She is cold. She's ruthless. She's strong. At the same time, you see when she goes and see this kid, she's a woman. So when she's fighting like a warrior and she's ready to die. But she's a woman for being this ruthless warrior. She doesn't look like men. She keeps her femininity. Even her fight on the train has this feminine touch, which is so round and curved comparing to men fighting. She keeps this very fine, defined movements in her fight even. But she's as ruthless and brutal as all the other men. She's just kept her femininity, and she's a woman. When she goes and see Ketevan and the kid, you see that, wow, she's actually a woman, which is very beautiful. That is something I wanted to be there, to stay there.
Yeah. It's got me really interested. Like, we see a little bit of where Tyler is coming from. Why we know from the beginning why he's pushed in the way that he's pushed, but I haven't exactly seen why you're pushed in the way, like, I'm hoping we kind of get that backstory at some point. Is that something that you know about, or something that as an actor you create?
Well, there is a script for her and where she's coming from. So this script exists actually for a prequel. I have an idea where she's coming from. I think she's coming from that grief and pain, that's where her and Tyler relate and connect to each other in their past story. Not that Tyler exists in her childhood or her teenage time and the process she's coming from where she's coming from, but she's coming from a very, very dark place, and she made her way through somehow to this empire that she built. So that's what I say is that what I love about her so much is all this mystery and everything we don't know about her, because she's this exceptional character. We rarely have like a hero warrior that is not sexualized. It's a very feminine one, but not feminine because somebody loves her or she loves somebody, because she's just feminine at the same time, very ruthless. So I love everything we don't know about her, and I hope that we will get to explore her story, because it's actually very interesting where she's coming from.
Yeah. And Sam, to handle that stuff in the right way, in some senses, you've got to be gentle when you're talking about this.
Yep.
In other senses, as we saw from the first movie, I mean, and I'm not trying to make light of this, but, a kid gets thrown off of a roof, and it's not the same thing. And I'm sorry to be laughing at that, but, it is these heavy emotional scenes. Like, how do you want to handle that? How do you want those moments to come across?
I think as an artist, my job is to be truthful. In those moments, I think yes, it can be hard. Yes, it can be scary. Yes, it can be traumatic. But I think, truth is what can free up a lot of those stuck emotions. Mm-hmm. So I think just being truthful with it when you approach it with the actors and say, hey, this is a very intense scene. We're dealing with some pretty sensitive subject matter, but let's just be as truthful and respectful as possible of the human experience.
Yeah. Well, it is done masterfully through here. And those moments, like, even looking back at the first one, I look back at that last, 5 minutes, 10 minutes where there's no dialogue that you can hear. Like, that's like the one camera, the shots and all that stuff, like, those are huge, but there's something about that moment that's like in the pantheon of legends. Like, what's the calling card for this one? Because that seemed like such a special moment in that movie, artistically. Do you think about that specifically when you were going into this second one? Like, what's that moment going to be?
Yeah, I think, for me, it is trying to key into the moments between the moments, right? Which for me, the moments, the marquee moments are, yes, the 21-minute oneer, the crazy roof fight, it's the church fight. What are the moments between the moments when characters get to, have that downtime where it's like their private lives being made public to us? Those are the moments I wanted to key in on. And it was less about finding the one specific moment to hang a hat on. It was more about trying to be truthful with these relationships and these characters and try to, again, lay bare how they're feeling so we can connect with them deeper. Because then when those moments, those quiet moments become real and truthful, we connect as an audience. We go, oh, like, ugh, I felt that. And now I'm much more willing and prepared to go through the fire with them with all these crazy action sequences without, losing interest. So like, because I'm invested in their journey. And I think that was my biggest focus, was trying to make sure those moments in between the big action set pieces were truthful and had emotional impact so that we could withstand all of this action, the barrage you're about to see through the whole thing.
Yeah, of course, as we said, dropping the ballot in, knowing when to drop the ballot in, and making sure it's not a bathroom break ballot on top of that.
Exactly. Such a challenge with these movies, such a challenge.
Yeah, of course, I got to ask about some of those follow shots, those one-shotters. We get a courtyard fight and we get a car scene basically immediately after. I'm just going to ask this in the most generic way I can. How did you do that?
Well, some of that's trade secret. Some of it's going to come out, I'm sure, in behind the scenes on Netflix, like To Doom or something. But truthfully, the gauntlet that was laid down for me and for the stunt team was, I think Joe wrote in the script, and now we experience the greatest wonder in cinema history. And you're like, oh, well, thanks for for making the job easy. Or like, I think another description of that courtyard fight was in a sequence to rival Old Boy, which, classic action sequence. So all that aside, you got to let that go and not be caught up in that. It was like, how do I immerse the audience in this experience as deeply as possible and make sure that they come along for the ride? And a lot of that had to do with what came before, those 25 minutes before we actually get into that crazy action, so that we understand who the characters are, why they're fighting, who's involved. And then you can really pull people along, and hopefully it won't be a bathroom break, and people will stay with you through that crazy action sequence. And then it becomes, like, for me, sticking with the methodology, which is that handheld camera and the feeling of being a character in the movie, so that you as the audience get to experience it in an immersive way. Like when something happens to your right and you want to look because you heard something, the camera looks over there. So it's almost intuitive, if you will. And that was the kind of the methodology. And I think it's just trying to stay true to that, even though we use a lot of different fun tools to some of those pass through cars, and we were on the train going from on top to inside. We use a lot of different fun toys and tools to achieve those shots. It was still trying to stay true to the original intent, which was immersion for the fans.
Yeah. And it feels like that. I mean, I feel like I'm in that. It's so
the feeling. That's the important thing, right? Like, because you can look back and watch it in third person and go, wow, that's amazing. It's more popcorn, please. But when you feel something, I think when you leave the experience, whether you get up off the couch or walk out of the cinema, it stays with you. And I think that is what we're trying to do, so that it's not just something you forget about and go, like, what's next? You kind of think about it and remember that feeling and go, wow, I appreciate that, whether from an emotional level or an artistic one.
And Gal, what is it like to act with those long 20-minute nonstop scenes? Because we hear about, choreography being a big part, of course, of acting, but this really does feel like a dance.
Oh my God, it's a killer. I mean, we said we had to prepare our body, like our physical training and martial arts, and 2 months of training like athletes. But I think what we were really getting ready was our mental health to be able to do those things. Because when you're doing a oneer, every take needs to be good enough so they can move on. Everything that goes wrong in one take, they have to do it again and again and again, because they need that good enough. They never say perfect, but good enough so that they can stitch it, they can move on. And if that one take happens to be a take that you have to run for 300, 400 meters, you need to run 50 times and you have to keep running. So you have to be mentally prepared like a monk, like a soldier of cinema, dedicating your body and mind to this scene where there are so many elements that need to be perfect, from kids, other actors, camera, explosions, cars, stitches, end of it. Like, it is, I can't tell you to what point it pushes you, where you at the 50th take, you're like, I cannot move anymore, just give me a moment to sit, but you can't, you have to keep going. So I think this project really pushed all of us, not only me, but even Chris was talking about it, to like some really, really limits of a human acting capacity, because it wasn't only mental, emotional, but it was physical. On the physical level was exhausting.
Yeah, well, it is beautifully done, and it does feel like a dance at some point. I mean, there is a musicality to this whole movie. There's Sam was also talking about it too. There is a musicality to the languages that come out in it, and I was able to, the way the rhythm is, hardcore with the action, and then drops down to tell the story. And knowing that that's part of your background too, and I talk about the music, do you find that you incorporate that into when you're acting?
Absolutely. I think music and rhythm, it's something that really helped me in this industry, because it's all about rhythm. The moments, the scenes that I love, it's all about when everything is in the right rhythm. Because when you don't get that rhythm, right, when you look at incredible actors of this world, like Daniel Day-Lewis, Al Pacino, they have a rhythm that is just perfect. The moment they move their arm, the moment they move their head, it's just that music of their body, the dialogues and everything, that it comes together. And of course, this movie is the same thing. It's like those moments of down, to be able to breathe again, and then how it goes up again. For me, cinema is all about rhythm, and the movies that you see that it's not working because the rhythm, either it's the rhythm of emotions or rhythm of the scenes or rhythm of the totality of the movie that is not working. Well, thankfully in this one, I think the rhythm came together somehow to create a symphony that is like an action entertainment movie. At the same time, it engages you like emotionally, which is quite rare, because these days action movies, it can be really some incredible scenery, like you're watching like a game, but you don't engage, as if like you're watching a scene on TikTok. Well, this one, you manage to engage emotionally. The audience is there wanting to know more about the characters and everything. And I think this is the biggest achievement of this particular action movie.
Yeah, it is beautifully done. I cannot wait to see where this story goes to. I've loved watching your work in the past movies, and on that new La Lorna EP. I've loved hearing what you've done musically out there as well. Extraction 2 is so good. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.